Great. Good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be here this evening. We have an incredible guest. It's Dr. Jenna Macciochi, and I think I've said your surname wrong. Have I said it
Oh
right?
no, it's perfect, Macciochi. You did it.
I've been so nervous about saying your name right. I'm so happy to have you here with us this evening. So Dr. Jenna is a immunologist with the University of Sussex, and we are so honored to have you here at this special time where everything is just all about immunity. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thanks for inviting me on.
I'm thrilled. And you've got your book that's just come out as well.
Yeah, I know it's been a surreal week. So I've only got one copy because this is the only copy because all of this is ones I tried to get sent out never made it out because everybody's now at home. So I think Amazon is still delivering, but I obviously wanted to give some with friends and family and stuff. And yeah,
Congratulations on your book, because
thank you.
it couldn't have been better timed, though. I mean,
It's crazy. It's mind blowing. If I'd known that we were going to be sitting here all in isolation at home in the middle of a global pandemic, when I had this idea to write a book about the immune system, I might have written it a bit differently, actually.
Because I remember we first met, I think it was just as my book was either coming out or just about to come out.
Yeah.
To write about a book on immunity, and then from there it grew, became the book, and now it's come out at a time where the whole world is talking about it, and obviously we quite consumed by it right now, actually.
Yeah, it's a real topic on everyone's lips at the moment, and in one sense it's good that people are thinking about their immune system, but yeah, and the other side of it is that there's unfortunately a lot of confusion and sort of misunderstanding around what it is and what people can do, and a lot of anxiety about the coronavirus and how to stay well right now. So yeah,
so I'd love for us to discuss a lot, as much as we can, in this time that we have all around that, and also like what does it all mean in light of the coronavirus as well. But I'd also love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, but also to explain what is a doctor of immunology. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say my first job is being a mom to twins. So I've got 5-year-old boy and girl twins. So that definitely keeps me busy. I decided to go into immunology when I was leaving school, not really with any great guidance in terms of my career, but I just had this fascination with the human body and health and disease. And I just always wanted to understand, why do people get sick? What's wrong? How do things work? And then from there, I sort of fell into the subject and just fell in love with it. And I think it's quite serendipitous, quite lucky that I found something that I love so much. There's been lots of ups and downs along the way. I had, when I had my kids, I thought, God, I can never go back to working the same way again. And I actually quit my job because they wouldn't give me very much maternity leave. And I ended up training to be a fitness instructor, and I did that for a while because I just couldn't face the idea of going back to a normal job. Yeah, because I always enjoyed fitness, and I was doing some postnatal workouts. I lived in Switzerland at the time, and then they convinced me to do the training program, and then I used to take classes for pre and postnatal women, and have pregnant women squatting and running around. And I haven't really kept that up because obviously I found my way back to working in the field of immunology. And so, but yeah, it was kind of like a weird detour, you just having a child just changes you, and sometimes you're just not ready to fuse your old life with your new life. So yeah, and then I came back to the UK and started working at Sussex, and that's been where I've been ever since. So, but I've kind of worked in different areas, so chronic inflammation, allergies, and then laterally in Switzerland I was looking more at the interface between the gut and the immune system, and diet and fiber and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, kind of dotted around. But my kind of first love is, what I write about a lot in the book is how modern life is hard, and a lot of us are functioning at kind of, a subpar level, kind of 25% less than what we should be. And it's just because of, all these different things that we have to deal with, like subtle little things that actually can grind us down and have an impact on our health without us really even knowing it. And actually, when things like this happen and we have this pandemic and we're all, stuck at home, or the people who are on the front line, it's a real time for reflection. And you're like, oh, you have to step off the treadmill, step off of sort of running around, and then get that space to think and go, okay, what was I not happy with, and what there's always an opportunity to change and grow whenever there's this kind of crazy situation, I think. So
I think we're going to see a
yeah.
lot of change with that. I think that I, like myself personally, I feel like I'm going to slow down quite a lot, because it's exactly what you've said there. Modern life is crazy. Like, we're just going 20 miles an hour. We don't stop. We're not sleeping. It's blue light, even though we're doing this to ourselves this evening, but it's blue light
I know
coming at us the whole time. And change in foods that we're eating, with all these food-like products on the market, and this incredibly clever marketing that makes us think certain things are so good and beneficial for us. So it's hard for the body. And my focus has been a lot around the hormones, and how this modern life is affecting our hormones. But even the hormones that I discussed, like cortisol and all of those, they have a knock-on effect on the immune system as well. And
exactly.
I think we don't actually really think about the immune system until we're ill, but our immune system is involved even pre-conception, enabling the sperm to meet the egg, to be able to, for you to be here. That all
exactly
was at play in all of that. So I thought, if you could please tell us, like, what does immunity mean, and what's the importance of it, and why do we get sick?
Yeah, so it's a big topic, it's a big question. It's probably difficult to encapsulate, but I'll try my best to break it down. I think the first thing is that people often think of it as being one thing, like a binary on-off switch that we turn on and off when we need to. But actually, it's more like a series of switches, or even more like a series of different resets. It even includes things like the barriers to our body, so the delicate cells that line our airways and our digestive tract, the microbiota that sits on top of that, that's all part of our defenses. And then there's a whole spectrum of different cell types and subtypes of subtypes that can be activated when things go wrong in our body. They look out for things like danger or damage or infection, and then they respond accordingly. So it's working hard even when we don't think about it. Like you said, we normally think about it when we're scrambling around for vitamin C when it's winter and we've got the seasonal allergy, or when there's a global pandemic, and then we're suddenly very concerned with our immune system. But actually, it's working hard all the time, because it has to tolerate all the things in your environment, and it has to decide what is something we should respond to and what is something we should ignore. So, all of the things that we're breathing in and eating and swallowing that are not dangerous, the immune system has to choose to ignore that. And then if we do get an infection or something, some damage in our body, then the immune system has to know there it should go there and correct that problem. So it's got all these kind of molecular ways to detect that. So it's working hard all the time. It's the thing that makes our muscles stronger when we work out. Like you say, it's the thing that accommodates a pregnancy. It's the thing that is involved in healing and wound repair. And if even if you twist your ankle and it gets swollen, like I did last year, and I tore all the ligaments in my left ankle slipping over.
I remember that on Instagram.
I know, it was awful. It still causes me a few problems now, but there was no broken skin, there was no infection, there was no bacteria, but my ankle was hugely swollen, and that was all those inflammatory cells rushing in and trying to deal with the damage to the tissue. Just by that sheer force of breaking up the tissue, releases these little damage molecules that is a red flag to our immune system. And we call them damage associated molecular patterns, but there's actually a new term that's been coined called lifestyle associated molecular patterns. And these are kind of molecular patterns that happen in our cells when we have a poor lifestyle. So things like having high cholesterol, or blood sugar excursions, also sort of stresses and strains from environmental factors and that we're subjected to. So I think all of these little danger signals can trigger your immune response as well. And the other thing we don't often think about is the resolution of inflammation, like switching the immune response off again.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't really understand this for a long time, but it's kind of come to light that it's a very active process. Just simply by getting the inflammatory response activated, you switch it off again, and it's a very kind of cyclic, complete process if it works properly. But being such a complicated system, there's a lot of scope for things to go wrong. And yes, I'm sure you're aware, and many of the people watching, that allergies, autoimmune diseases, all of these things can be caused when our immune system sort of goes awry and does something that it shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I have Hashimoto's, and I always say that if you got in, so that's for those that are listening that don't know, that's where you have an autoimmune condition in where your immune system is involved in attacking your thyroid, to put it very simply. And whenever I see clients in clinic with these conditions, whether they've got Hashimoto's, and I say to them, it's no longer just a thyroid condition. It's an immune system issue now that we need to be working on as well. And that the gut is such a big play in that. And I'm so pleased that you brought up the microbiome earlier as well. So the microbiome is our good flora. It's the good guys in the gut. It's what I call my eco warriors in my book as well. We really need them. And when we're dealing with the immune system, we need to be looking at the body as a whole. And that includes taking care of these microbes in the gut. And I feel that modern life has let us down in a big way, because things just became really processed and the fibers went out of our food, and therefore the food for the good bacteria, the microbiome, just wasn't there anymore. And after years, we're starting to see what that's actually doing to us.
I mean, I think this is, gut health has sort of made it onto the mainstream in the last couple of years, and people are really starting to think about their gut health and understand a little bit more about it. And we know that the microbes in the gut are the main educators of the immune system. I think one of the hard things, though, is that even I have this sort of, no matter how hard you try to take care of your gut health, it can be eroded by things that are outside our control. So there's this idea of the impoverished microbiome. So if your mother and your grandmother lost key microbes through, different things that happened in their life, antibiotics, certain medications that they had to take, then those microbes have gone for good and they never get passed on to the subsequent generation and subsequent generations. So we're finding over time with each generation that people are born with an even more impoverished microbiome, and maybe no amount of fertilizing that with fiber can bring back microbes that have been lost over time. I think this is kind of general population at a population level what we find with the microbiome. So there is only so much that we can do, and I think it can be really frustrating for people if they feel like they're doing everything right, but they're not seeing the sort of miraculous changes that they would assume that would be possible if they're taking probiotics and increasing the fiber in their diet and stuff. And I think that's where we have to look at how our environment has changed, that we're not getting all these key inputs into our health that we need, that we've evolved to need, because our environments just don't support that anymore, and these get eroded away and it's very hard to recoup them. But I think starting with focus on your gut is probably one of the best places that people can go to think about improving and keeping their immune system strong and healthy.
And I think that actually scares me.
Oh, sorry.
Generation to generation.
I didn't mean that.
But I think that if we getting a varied diet in and we're doing our part in that sense, de-stressing as much as we can, but then also listening to the signals that the body's giving us. If we're having digestive distress, if we're bloated, if we've got diarrhea, if we're constipated, if all of those things are going on, then speaking to our doctors and finding out what's going on, and working on that's part of looking after your health overall as well. And I feel that modern life maybe sometimes is a bit too busy and we just push things aside.
I think that the good thing with the gut is that it gives you kind of real-time feedback. If you eat something and within the next few days as it's passing through your system, you very much get those physical symptoms. So you were saying, like digestive upset and bloating and all the rest of it. So it's kind of like, oh wait, something's not right about what I'm eating or how I'm eating or that kind of thing. So yeah, it's very close feedback loop that we can tune into to sort of
I can
sense what's
sometimes
going
tell you
on.
within the hour whether you are not happy with
Exactly.
you,
Yeah, yeah.
or the stress that you're under. So what about
Hmm.
the idea of eating ourselves healthy? Do you think that is, in your opinion, we able to eat this? And for me, it's never about this perfect diet. It's more of this balanced diet with enough nutrients coming in. Can we do that to keep ourselves healthy?
I mean, I think it's complicated. I think diet, it's got really complicated. It's not using the word diet as in weight loss, but diet as in what we eat.
And what we eat.
Because in one sense, I think it can be a stress for people who feel like they want to achieve a certain diet. And sometimes it means that they maybe have a very restrictive diet, or they put a lot of pressure on themselves to eat a certain way. We see images of food all the time on Instagram looking amazing, delicious, and sometimes it's not always possible, or you're just too tired and you just open the fridge and start eating whatever's in there, and while you're thinking about what to cook. And I think that we put a lot of onus on diet as the foundation of our health, but really, I feel like diet is just one of the many levers that we can pull. And I wouldn't say it had any more hierarchy over the other lifestyle factors, but everyone has their own Achilles heel. So some people might struggle with sleep, some people might struggle with stress, or their gut health, or getting their exercise in. Some people might struggle with getting a good diet. And it's sort of like, you focus on what's your weakest point, what do you struggle with most, but don't forget all the other factors, because they're just as important. I'd say I'd find it hard to say what would take priority. I think everyone has their own thing that they know they need to work on. I think with the immune system, it's important to know that the immune system is going to work best when it has no deficiencies in any of the key vitamins and minerals. And it needs, the proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Proteins are the building blocks for all the things like the antibodies and the cytokines they're producing. Carbohydrates serve as a fuel source, but they're also conveniently packaged up with fiber, which the gut needs. And fats are, we need a certain amount of good fats. They make up the membranes of our immune cells. They're involved in signaling between the different immune cells. So we kind of need a good combination of all of these, and we should be getting these from as much diversity as possible. It's quite easy to slip into habits where you eat the same foods all the time, even if they are so-called healthy foods. And I think we need to be going for diversity, trying to not have any deficiencies in anything. And then if you do follow a particular lifestyle choice, like if you want to be vegan or exclude a certain food group for whatever reason, then making sure that you fill any potential gaps. I think focusing on supplements can feel like an excuse for bad diet, because you feel like I'm plugging the hole anyway. And if you prioritize it first approach, it's also going to bring you that fiber and the phytonutrients that are found in plant foods as well. So it's and it's just satisfying to eat a meal. I think, like, to sit down and enjoy a meal and feel hungry and ready for that meal is something quite nice about that. It's been lost a little bit.
And that connection when we're eating as well, because there's so many of us eating at our desk, eating on the run. I mean, for me, I think that part of the foundation for health is ensuring that we getting this varied diet in, and it's not about perfectionism, about this, it's more consistency over perfectionism. And I speak about that quite a lot in my 6 pillars in the book as well, where it's not just food, it's not just exercise, it's not just sleep, it's about bringing all of these things in. But when we start lacking in those nutrients, I call them Bitcoin. Like, our body trades in this energy, and the energy is the nutrients of the food. It's incredible. And so valuable, isn't it? And that's how I see food as well. It can bring you this valuable Bitcoin that your body can trade in. But I feel that modern lifestyle, that can really let us down. And with these, on every street corner, you probably have about 4 or 5 different takeouts. And you know,
Yeah.
once you get into the habit of eating these foods on a daily basis, they're quite addictive. You want more. You want the next
Yeah.
takeout burger or the next. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love fries with vinegar and salt. Like,
Oh yeah.
actually, I love that, even though I know that the oil is not good for my body. Um, so, but I think that if we looking at and that's what everyone wants to know now. And I know they're using the word boost your immune system. So that's another thing
Hmm.
I want to talk to you about. Can we boost the immune system? Um, but if we were to look at which nutrients we could focus on that would help in terms of supporting the immune system, which ones do you think we could highlight as trying to include in our diet, especially now at this time?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think fiber would be up there. I know that's probably not everyone's first immune nourishing food that they would think of, but you know, when the microbiota in our gut digest fiber, and it's them that are digesting it, not us. So our digestive system isn't sophisticated enough to break down a lot of these plant fibers and extract what it needs. So when the microbiota are doing that, they produce these things called postbiotics. So most people have heard of prebiotics and probiotics, and now we actually call these metabolites postbiotics, and they are absorbed into our bloodstream, and they're having effects not only in the gut but all over the body. And it's kind of like your own personalized pharmacy. There's literally thousands of these compounds that are going to be produced when the microbiota eat the fiber that you're eating in your diet. So we really need to be keeping those microbes happy and healthy and well fed, because they're producing all these amazing metabolites that are, you know, having really profound effects on our immune system. Some of the ones that perhaps are most well studied would be the short chain fatty acids, so things like butyrate. So this is produced by the microbes in your gut. So it's really important for the regulatory cells of the immune system. And we need these to, you know, calm down autoimmune diseases, keep inflammation in check, prevent allergies. So they're really kind of like the peacekeepers around the body, patrolling the immune system, making sure it doesn't do anything it shouldn't.
And
So fiber is really important. Sorry.
sorry to cut you off there, but just to explain, like, what do you mean by fiber? Are we talking about a slice of bread, or we're looking
Oh
at?
yeah,
So
that's a really good question.
I think it's quite important because I feel that it can get a bit confusing because a lot of the ads that you see, the fiber is like a piece of wheat, and that's all they
Yes.
found. And there's
Well,
no,
I know. I mean, I
there's
think that's really important to clarify, because fiber has got an image problem in the UK. Like, people think of fiber, they think of all bran or like foods with added fiber, and it's about the diversity of fiber. So fiber is found in all plant-based foods, so we're talking not just fruit and vegetables, but beans and pulses, nuts and seeds, legumes, you know, all the whole spectrum of plant-based foods, like starchy veg, green leafy veg, herbs and spices. And you want to be getting as much of these in as possible. So I think the aim is around 30 different plant foods per week. Even things like cooked and cooled potatoes or rice, these have a resistant starch, which is particularly useful for feeding the gut bugs. But it's going for diversity, because the more diverse your diet, the more diverse you know, the potential of your microbiota is. So stop thinking of fiber as being like, you know, that little sweet symbol that you see on products. And if
like waving around the wheat,
exactly,
that's so
and if
nice.
some
We need to move on from that.
exactly, we need to move on. And if some product says, oh, it's got added fiber, if you look on the packet, it probably just has one type of fiber. So we really need to be like thinking about the diversity and not just looking for products with added fiber and thinking that that's going to be sufficient. So
And then like getting legumes and pulses and everything in. Like, for example, Isabella doesn't want to eat chickpeas or anything like that. So I've actually started putting them into an ice cream for her. So I
oh,
blend them
nice.
with loads of greens and berries, and I'm using Nush yogurt at the moment, and then I stick them in little molds, and she loves it. And I'm getting chickpeas in
Oh,
her. I've got mung beans in her today, and so there's ways of like bringing these foods in.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's for kids, but for adults that don't like it, you can do that for yourself as well. You know, just pop them in a
Yes,
smoothie,
yeah.
or yeah. And I think getting in that diversity is really important. So when you doing your weekly shop, so 30 different plants. But if you think about it, each household, what do they have? Maybe 10 favorites, and they maybe rotate
Yeah.
5 of those every week. So maybe something that we could all try and do, and especially during this time, is add one different type of veg into our basket. And there's so many recipes for free on the web, on the web. Is that what you call it? But there's so many free recipes on blogs that you can just Google what that vegetable is and what you can do with it.
I think now is like a really great time to focus on cooking because we're all at home, if we are lucky enough to be at home, not working on the front line. And I think we all have those random cans of beans and pulses lurking at the back of our cupboards that, you know, we can give a bit of a renaissance to. And, you know, if you're a bit daunted about how to cook them, like you said, there's so many good resources. And, you know, just experimenting. My kids came with me to the supermarket last week and they saw the emptiness. I mean, it was just decimated near where we live. And that was quite profound for them, because then when they were asking for certain foods, I was like, I don't have that because there is no food in the shop and we all have to stay home now. And they've been really understanding of that, even though they're only 5. And I think just having that, you know, that visual of going to our local supermarket and seeing that everything was gone really stuck with them, and then they kind of were accepting of like whatever random stuff I'm throwing at them at the moment.
And are they getting involved in the cooking as well?
Yeah, they've always quite liked doing that. So yeah, we're in the middle of a house renovation at the moment, so we've got like a real kind of temporary old kitchen they're literally about to knock it down this week, but they haven't because of obviously what's happening. And I'm kind of pleased, because if they'd knocked it down and they weren't able to rebuild the new one, we would like literally have no kitchen at all for months and months. But so it's not exactly a good environment for cooking, but we're sort of making the best of it, and we have a little old hob. And
I think now is a great time to get the kids involved, even if it's like the older kids, just getting them to chop up the vegetables, maybe even having conversations about what they are, so that we get them, you know, we've lost that whole like really connecting with the food as well. So, you know, getting their hands washed and then chopping up the veg, the ones that are old enough to do that, or the younger ones peeling beans or whatever it is, top and tailing. There's so much that they can do. Okay, so fiber is one of the things, and what else do you
so fiber, so good fats. I think omega-3s there are something that's worth focusing on in your diet, whether you get your oily fish in every week and you get your omega-3s that way. If you don't, then taking a supplement is probably a good idea. I think we both use the same brand of omega-3s.
With Bare Biology?
Bare Biology.
I love them. They're such a great
They're in Brighton. I know, they're like local to me, and like I just think they're such a great story. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of theirs. So I think that omega-3s, that, you know, they're really important for our cell membranes, keeping them all fluid. Our immune system uses them to make these special pro-resolving mediators that like reduce inflammation and control inflammation. So I think this is something really worth focusing on. So the good fats, the fiber, the phytonutrients. So, you know, we often think of vitamins and minerals, but actually I think it's more interesting to look at the phytonutrients in plants. So these plant compounds, of which there's like, I don't know, over 28,000 or something. And I like to think of it like an orchestra. You need the whole synchronicity of all of these. That comes from eating all your 30 different plant-based foods a week, as being sort of super important. And
all the different brightly colored vegetables and fruit as well.
Exactly, the polyphenols.
Maybe focusing on purple, because that's not something that you see a lot of. So maybe some purple cabbage and some berries or figs. There's not very many purple foods, so where you can get some of those in aubergine as well is another one. Dr. Jenna, I'll put a link for her. She does a lot on phytonutrients and eating full rainbow of colors and trying to get that in as often and as much as possible.
Yeah, I think, you know, I see a lot of supplement companies offering phytonutrients in pill form, and I'm always a little bit like, I don't know, I had a friend in America who was doing a lot of testing on all of these different products and found that they're hugely variable in the amount of active ingredient that actually makes it into these supplements. Plus, you know, I think like food is kind of packaged in a way that you can't overconsume a particular nutrient, whereas if you take a supplement, you might overconsume something that, you know, some is good and more is not better. We often think more is good and more must be better, but I think that's not always the case. So I
Especially
think,
now with
you know,
vitamin C, isn't it?
exactly, yeah, you should really focus on the food, and then you're going to be able to get all that fiber as well and not overconsume something that could be a bit of a problem. You know, even with vitamin and mineral supplements, we shouldn't really need to take more than what our body needs. So unless we have a deficiency, it's like taking more is not going to make your immune system work better than it already does at baseline. When you are sick, your needs for certain things go up, and you know, there can be a bit of a triaging of resources that happens in the body. And I think that's where vitamin C and zinc have been shown to be sort of the key immune nutrients. So they're the ones people probably think about when you think about taking supplements for their immune system. And there's like some evidence that vitamin C can be useful for shortening the duration of a cold, for example, if you take more at onset. But the results are quite marginal, and taking extra just because it's winter isn't necessarily going to make you invincible to getting sick. But I think that, you know, it's probably taking the odd vitamin C supplements is probably of lower risk than other less well kind of studied supplements.
I think,
but it might give you a bit of a tummy upset if you take too much.
Exactly. And if you have zinc on an empty stomach, you'll probably feel really nauseous. I had to get off the bus once because I had taken my zinc supplement on an empty stomach. That was just, I think it was like about 12 years ago now. And I thought, oh my God, I've got food poisoning. I ran into the bar and I'm like, I've got a toilet. Like, it was really bad. I thought. And then
my goodness,
when it passed as quick as it came, I was like, oh, how much zinc did I just take? But as a nutritional therapist, you know, I use supplements personally when I need them, and I use them in clinic if I need them. And I've spent many years researching, and I speak with the supplement companies, and I know what I'm recommending, and I know the dose, and I know what medication they are, I know if there's any interactions, I know their history, their family history. And what really makes me quite angry is when people are just recommending supplements and dosages, and they like, take this amount of
exactly,
that thing, do this, do that, and I'm just thinking, oh, you'll never hear that from me, because unless I know your health history, I'm not recommending a supplement.
Exactly. And likewise, I'm generally, from my perspective, not in a position to recommend specific things for people. I talk sort of more generally about a general healthy population. This is what we should focus on. And I think anyone with underlying health conditions or medications or specific dietary requirements, then they really need to see a professional and one-to-one and have that assessed, don't they, rather than looking online and taking generic recommendations for specific things. So I think
a lot of the time we think, okay, so if 2 capsules of this vitamin C is good for me, then maybe 4 will be even better. But,
exactly.
you know, all our nutrients, like, they work in synergies. If we start doing that, then we can be throwing something else out, like too much zinc and throw out copper.
Exactly.
And then we start seeing a cascade of things going wrong in the body. We don't see it on the surface because it's not, you're not going to see it on your hand.
Exactly.
And we think that because we can buy them over the counter basically anywhere, but they're not powerful. These supplements, you know, they're powerful compounds in the body, and we need to not be self-medicating with supplements, in my opinion.
Exactly.
You know, vitamin D in the winter, but this is, you speak to your doctor and you find out what works for you. That's why we have our medical teams. That's why we have the people there, so that because they know us, they know our body.
Exactly. And also, you know, different life stages, I think our needs change across the course of our life. So, you know, what might be recommended for, you know, a healthy white male between age 20 to 50 might be different for a female with a different background, who's in her late 50s, so we have a lot of the clinical trials and stuff are often done on healthy men as well. So we have to remember that, we're all very unique, and I think people should always seek advice from a professional before they embark on anything. Which is really difficult right now in the midst of the coronavirus situation, because I think it gives people a sense of agency over their health if they're taking something, or taking a supplement or something it makes them feel like they have control over a very uncontrollable situation. But I just think people need to be very careful, and like you say, realize that these can be powerful and they can have adverse effects as well if taken in the wrong way. So
definitely, if you're thinking, anyone that's watching, if you're thinking about taking a supplement, get in touch with your nutritional therapist, get in touch with your doctor, find out what you can be doing. People are doing online consultations now, doctors, nutritionists, everyone. So you are actually able to still speak to someone about it. Really encourage that you do. But vitamin C is really getting its moment, and a lot of the trials were done with high doses of vitamin C, and there's been some positive results with the coronavirus. But just to stress that was done in a hospital environment, intravenous, monitored by someone that knew exactly what they were doing. So please don't just, because you've read there that they were taking however many thousands per kilo of body weight, that now you can just up your vitamin C, because you'll probably get a runny tummy before long in any case.
I think probably nobody can buy any now anyway, because I think the shops are completely empty.
Exactly. Okay, so if we were to say vitamin C could be beneficial to support the immune system, and zinc, if we wanted to bring those into the diet, then eating the food along with the fiber and all of that's going to be even more beneficial for the immune system.
So, and then I think the last thing is to think about the flavor. We're eating for health, but we're eating for enjoyment, and the endorphins from having a meal, from being happy, from feeling like you're taking care of your body, that is really important for the immune system. So all of your neurotransmitters that are dictating your emotions, the receptors for those are on our immune cells, so they're sensing what we're feeling. If we're stressed and anxious about our diet because we're worried it's not perfect, that's going to be detrimental to our immune system. But if we're enjoying our food, and food has become a happy time, and my family have like Italian heritage, and there's this saying in Italy about the joy of the table. It's like being around the table, reclaim your dinner table and enjoy that meal, and that's actually nurturing your immunity as much as the nutrients on the plate. So
I love that. So just connecting with each other, switch off your phone, sit there, I just that to me is everything. That's great. And then if we're talking about foods that you may want to bring in as well, if you were, for example, with your breakfast having tomatoes, having putting some spinach or watercress, or if you like peppers in your scrambled eggs, for example, that's bringing in the that way. And there's a lot that we can do with the kinds of simple family meals, that we can start adding in additional fiber, additional nutrients in that way.
I think lentils are a great one to sneak into things like, if you're making a shepherd's pie or a chili con carne or a curry or anything, like just throw in some lentils, and like my husband, my kids, they hardly notice now because it's just in there with everything else. And that's another way to get fiber, especially if kids are quite fussy with certain things. Lentils are very small and subtle, you can put them in, they don't notice.
Good. Yes, that's what we have to do. I thought, oh, am I going to be that mum? I am totally that mum. I mean,
kids really eat with their eyes.
And then what about vitamin A for the immune system, and selenium, for example?
Again, they're really important. Vitamin A is a bit of a funny one because it depends where you're getting it from, because we have the retinol form, which is highly absorbed, and then we have the carotenoid form.
The retinol we get from animal-based
products. So it has a rule, it's got a kind of it's a double-edged sword really. So if you have too much of the retinol form in your diet, it can actually trigger inflammation and inappropriate immune responses. But if you have too little, then it can also be problematic. So vitamins A is really a one where if you are going to supplement, you need to talk to a healthcare professional first. Absolutely, because if you get it wrong, it could be quite have a lot of consequences. If you're have enough in your diet, it's really good for shaping the tolerance in the gut. So it's regulating the immune cells and particularly the regulatory ones. And these are the ones that we probably all need to nurture the most, really, the ones that are the peacekeepers in the body and stopping allergic and autoimmune reactions. So yeah, all the carotenoids, all the orange foods, getting all those in, I think is and selenium again. I think it's most people are unlikely to be deficient in selenium, and there could be problems with over consuming it. So again, it's one that's you should be very careful about supplementing, but it does play a real key role in the immune system. But you could probably argue that for all the essential vitamins and minerals. So they all have a role to play. And the reason that we know that they're really important for immunity is because if we have deficiencies in any of them, you're more or less going to see problems with infection and healing and wound repair. So just making sure that you don't have deficiencies. And if people are excluding specific foods from the diet, then they really need to maybe plug that gap with a supplement or get advice on how to eat a diet that's going to correct any deficiencies.
I've actually been doing quite a bit of organic acid testing in my clinic, and one of the things that I'm testing is selenium and iodine with people with thyroid conditions or autoimmune conditions. And I found that probably 80% of the population that I'm testing in clinic are all coming back deficient in selenium.
Really? That's really interesting.
I'm upping like Brazil nuts and like really just the basic foods that we can be eating to have that. And I'm getting
I think it's probably
after a year retesting, and the selenium's gone up with making
really interesting. Yeah. I think it's a testament to how differently our food is produced, because a lot of the produce they get selenium from the soil in the earth, and as the farming methods change, then the amount of selenium in the foods we're eating is going to change as well. So yeah, that's maybe something that people need to be aware of and get checked.
Yeah. But again, that's not something I would recommend anyone just goes and buys a selenium tablet off the shelf, because everything works.
Yeah.
Energy, but there was quite a interesting research paper that I read on how selenium could be beneficial in fighting off viruses in the body or helping to reduce viruses. Now we know that the coronavirus is something that's just knocked us all off of our feet, and it's not, we're learning every day about it still.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying this is specific for the coronavirus. It's just something that I had read with regards to having adequate or optimal selenium levels within the blood, within the body, was going to be helpful for viruses.
And it's quite an important antioxidant as well. And obviously, with any viral infection in the lower airways, you're getting a lot of inflammation, which is part of the damage. So you need to counter that with some antioxidants, because inflammation is very oxidative. So it's definitely really important for viral infections. And it's one of the ones that our immune system increases the need for when we are fighting an infection, particularly a viral infection, just like zinc as well. And zinc also has a role in preventing certain respiratory viruses from getting into our cells. But so far, we don't know for coronavirus if that's also the case.
And with regards to inflammation, I just want to clarify. So our body uses inflammation. It's an important part of life. But when what we're talking about here is when we should have like a flickering candle, is the way I like to describe it, of inflammation. But currently there's these bonfires that are happening within the body, and they're not being put out. And that's when it becomes an issue for the immune system. So things that can cause inflammation, if you wouldn't mind running through that as well, just so that the audience get to grips. I guess
Yeah.
but maybe just looking at, like, is it all, could it be external or internal things that we eat?
Yeah, I mean, it could be many things. So inflammation is one of the weapons of our immune system to protect us. So it's really quite important. We can never extinguish it completely, nor should we want to. It's triggered by anything untoward in the body. So if there's molecules of danger or damage, or as I mentioned earlier, these lifestyle associated molecular patterns, so patterns of things going wrong, it raises the red flag and we get this inflammatory response. And inflammation is designed to be short term. It goes in all guns blazing, brings in lots of immune cells to that site where there's a problem. So if you get a cut on your hand, you get some swelling. When I tore the ligaments in my ankle, I had all this swelling, redness, pain, heat. These are the cardinal features of inflammation. If you have a sore throat, you'll feel that the swelling in your neck. You have some pain, you start to get all the sort of uncomfortable symptoms. And the simple act of inflammation also triggers the start of the resolution cascade. So it's kind of like a cyclic process. One phase triggers the next phase, and then you bring about a resolution. And inflammation is designed to be helpful. It's supposed to remove a pathogen, get rid of a bacteria or a virus, repair a tissue that's been damaged. All of these sort of physiological reasons why you would want this short-term inflammatory response, and then whenever the pathogen's cleared or the damage is resolved, the inflammation will go away. And it should be a short-term thing. We're talking like days, weeks, but inflammation can be triggered by many different things. Things like high blood pressure, glucose excursions. So if you have problems with your blood sugar control, high cholesterol. I mean, there's like a whole spectrum of things that can trigger inflammation in the body. And if you're not resolving that properly, if you're not removing the stimulus that's triggered that, or you don't have enough of this sort of pro-resolving response and the regulatory response of the immune system, then it can kind of go on and go awry. And actually in coronavirus, people who have COVID-19, the damage is actually caused by an overshooting of their immune response. So it's a really vigorous immune response that damages the delicate parts of their airways, and then they cannot breathe, and the airways fill up with fluid and they end up with pneumonia. And so I think when we think about boosting our immune system, we often think about, boosting this defense mechanism of which inflammation is part of. But actually, you don't really want it to overshoot. You want it to be balanced. You want it to resolve appropriately as well, which is why I think boosting, although it's a term I think people understand, it's perhaps scientifically not the best way to describe what's going on in the body and what we need it to do.
I use the word boost as a bit of tagline clickbait to get people to read.
I never thought about that, but yeah, I guess that makes sense because it is a term people understand.
I was told off by someone. Well, not told off.
Oh my goodness!
He said to me, "Please don't use boost. Like, use the correct terminology." I was just like, "Oh
no!" Who said that?
I was with someone on Instagram, and I mean, she was really she messaged me afterwards. She was really polite, but I think she's on front line right now. She just doesn't want people to get the wrong, she just wants all the right information to be out there. So I totally understood, but I had used it. It took me a while before I posted. I'm like, should I, shouldn't I? I'm like, everyone understands this word boost. I changed it in the end. Which I put in the comment why I had changed it. Because I need to be part of that change in the dialogue if we want to be changing that, and not just sticking with my clickbait sentence. But I think what boost is, we think we're helping the immune system, but I guess what you've just said there now is we don't want it to be going into that overdrive. We want the off switch when it should be coming up, and not having those cytokine storms and everything happening within the body.
Yeah, exactly. And it's more a case of semantics, for want of a better term. And, for the lay public who don't know and don't understand the intricacies of the immune system, why would they know a different way to describe it? And I think that people are so quick on Instagram sometimes to tell people off, and it really bothers me because I'm like, sometimes it's like they don't know a better way to describe it. They just want to protect themselves. They want to know that their immune system is working at its best, and if that's for them to say, how can I boost it, then I get what they mean, you know. I
Yeah.
think we have to be kind of understanding of that as well.
I think people are just quite sensitive with the wording and the terminology. I mean, I hadn't said something completely out there, but yeah, I think it's quite interesting that where we're at now. But I understand she's she's front line at the moment, and she's so stressed out. And bless her, you know, she contacted me afterwards to chat to me, and I didn't take offense to it at first. I thought, should I leave it there or not? And I made the decision to change it because I understood where she was coming from.
Yeah.
But if we talking about, you know, the coronavirus and everything that we would be doing to keep ourselves healthy before that, what changes now in light of this invisible enemy that's keeping us all in our homes right now? Hopefully, please stay home.
Yes. So I mean, I think there's a few things to talk about at that point. And you know, the first is that we're all immunologically unique, and that's by design. So if you think about the news that we're hearing, there's young, healthy adults who are sort of not in the high risk category, who are, you know, walking around without symptoms, but they're infected with coronavirus. And then there's young, healthy adults who are, you know, severely ill in intensive care with coronavirus. And we have no clues yet why somebody would react so differently within that sort of healthy adult population with no underlying health conditions. And part of the reason is that we are very immunologically unique. People might have an example where they, you know, they've all got sick with their housemates or their family that live together, and you've all reacted quite differently to that cold or flu or whatever it is. And you know, that's kind of by design. So evolution has shaped us that way, because if we all reacted the same, then we would, you know, have died out as a species by now. We need to have an inherent diversity, and that's, you know, there's a very unique thing that happens to our immune system genes that allows that diversity to occur. So there's, you know, part of it is we don't know how we're going to respond to any infection, but we can give ourselves the best chance. And there's a few ways that we can, you know, give ourselves the best chance. And also, you know, the strength of your immune system is going to be built throughout your life with all your different experiences. So if you make sudden changes now because you're stuck at home and you're terrified of coronavirus, it might not translate as, you know, a magic bullet to health, but it's going to be really important. And I think immunities for life is not just for COVID-19.
Yeah.
So if you are making small changes, these are going to be the ones that are going to help you have a long health span. And that's really what we should be focusing on, because your immune system is the main driver of the aging process. So you really need to take care of that. So yeah, I think getting good sleep is like the foundation. And I know that sounds really boring, but having a rhythm, having a routine, going to bed at the same time every day, which is hard when people might be off work and their routine is disrupted. But I think we are creatures of rhythm, and it can be quite grounding in a time of uncertainty to have that rhythm, to get some fresh air every day, even if it's like opening your window if you don't have an outside space. We've been having some nice weather in the UK, so letting the sunshine onto your skin and feeling that, you know, like 10 minutes of just like fresh air lifts your spirits, and it's really good for helping you sleep at night. If you've just been stuck indoors in front of a computer all day, then
natural daylight, so important.
Exactly, so important. Getting to sleep at the same time, waking up at the same time, and trying to have consistent meal times. I'm a big meal person, like I'm not really a snacker, and I think if we snack, it's really easy to overeat. And if you consistently overconsume calories, it's really pro-inflammatory, and it actually can affect the function of your immune system. So don't overeat. Also, if you undereat, it can impair your ability to respond to infections. So calorie balance, enjoy your food, you know.
And let's just say on that point, I have been eating so much this last week. I'm like,
yeah, even today I was
starving. I'm like, what is going on? I'm hungry.
Like I'm normally like I say, a big meal person, but today I think I was just having a really intense day with like work stuff and then the kids, and I was just like, yeah, everybody needs to comfort eat sometimes, but you know, you need to, yeah. I think if we're eating proper meals, we're less likely to, you know, go and snack in between meals. And if we're cooking stuff that we're looking forward to eating, you don't want to spoil your appetite, you know, so you're less likely to sort of graze in between. And, you know, the sort of ultra processed food is really easy to overconsume. It goes down easy. It's like lacking in all the fiber and everything. It's just, you know, anyone knows when you open a bag of chips, like you can't stop because it's just
I definitely can't.
so if you can't get those stuff at the supermarket right now because everyone's bought all the food, then that's probably a good thing. You know, think of the little blessings from the fact that all you have to cook with is kind of raw ingredients, because it's probably the best thing for your health right now.
And on that point, what about sugar and the immune system? Is there any?
Yeah, so I mean, I think people are quite scared of sugar now. I think that sugar itself, like, we shouldn't demonize it, but if you have blood sugar problems, then you need to be perhaps careful how you're consuming it. There's actually not a lot of evidence for sugar itself being bad. It's more blood sugar excursions in, you know, after eating, or poorly controlled blood sugar. Plus, sugary things are really easy to overeat, so you're more likely to overconsume them and put on weight, which is where the problem really lies. So it's kind of a complex thing. I mean, I'm not someone with a sweet tooth at all. Like, I'm much more savory person, so I've never really, like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not the best person to maybe talk about that relationship with sweet foods. I know some people might have a very difficult relationship where they can't help but overconsume them, or it becomes like a comfort food. I don't know if that's something you've found in your
I mean, I've been through the full spectrum of all the eating disorders. You know, I just didn't want to do anything by half measures, it seems. So, you know, you know, for me, and especially with having polycystic ovaries and having the Hashimoto's and everything, I found that when I at that point removed sugar from the diet, that's when I started feeling better, and that's when the inflammation reduced in the body, and that's when I was able to get a period again, and, you know, of that, and not excessively exercising. Those are the things that work for me. And when I'm looking at, like, what that relationship with that insulin spikes or hyperinsulinemia, when that keeps happening, you know, that relationship with hormones, with inflammation in the body, with everything, it has such a big knock-on effect. So I think that me personally at this time, I would say sticking to that 80-20 balance that I try and really recommend that people do, like, now would be a great time to be doing that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, if we think about sort of metabolism, there's a real emerging field in how your metabolism interacts with the immune system, and you know, the macronutrients, the protein, carbs, and fats, and how the relative proportions of those in the diet may influence what's going on with the immune system. But it's very early stages. We know that when an immune response is mounted and the immune system's fighting something, it goes into a very kind of glycolytic stage. So this Warburg effect, which is actually what happens inside cancer cells where they start sucking up lots of glucose, it happens inside our immune cells. It's like a natural response because they need a lot of energy. It's quite energetically costly to mount an immune response and make all the things they need to make. Whereas the regulatory arm of the immune response is more something that oxidizes lipids, so it doesn't have the same huge need for glucose. But we don't quite know how that switch happens. So if you're changing the proportions of protein, carbs and fat in a diet, how you can really manipulate that response in people. But it could be that if someone has a metabolic deregulation in the body, then they would be much more sensitive to changes in the proportions of carbs or sugar and fat in the diet. I was going to say something else there, but my mind is trailing off.
Kept it so long as well. It's late now.
Getting past my bedtime.
We'll wrap up. And so with that glucose, would that be getting from, like, complex carbohydrates, and is that
again, I think
that gets used?
I think it depends on everyone. Everyone has a different tolerance for glucose. It depends what your diet pattern looks like overall, in terms of glucose stores. And I think, you know, me and you could eat the same amount of carbohydrate based foods, and our blood sugars would do very different things.
Very different, yeah.
Because we're really different. We're different metabolically. Our microbiomes will be different. Like our whole biology or physiology would be different. And I think that's why, you know, for some people, they might eat like white rice and it sends their blood sugar doolally, but for other people it doesn't even make a blip. And I think that then you need to really work together with a practitioner or someone to tune into where are your kind of foods that your body doesn't tolerate. They might not necessarily be the ones that we think of as being obviously sugary. It could be, you know, other things that for some reason just causes that blood sugar excursion to happen. So yeah.
I mean, I find that so fascinating. I mean, I want to dive into that even more, and just I'm also thinking about all the nutrients that we actually use up to digest sugary foods in the first place. And, you know, those nutrients are important for what we were discussing to like help support the immune system. And the way Bitcoin works is you can't say, okay, I want you to use this zinc for the immune system, I want you to use that for your thyroid.
Yeah, exactly.
Just trade where it needs it. And then like these responses, they use up a lot of nutrients. So that's why I just wanted to touch on that. I know that you were, and I'd like to just go back to that, please, because you were giving us some tips on what we can be doing. So we said sleep for one, having a routine, getting in these nutrient foods.
Yeah, movement. And I think when it comes to movement, we need to not think we can be sedentary all day, but it's okay because we're going to offset it with doing some high intensity exercise class in the evening. And it's really about just movement for life, like being a mover all day, turning even the most mundane tasks into movement. Like I'm obviously, you know, having worked as a fitness instructor and trained that way, and I love exercise. I've always been a very active person. I just do not have time to go to the gym as much as I'd like. Particularly now, I'm just like at home all the time. So I'm just like, oh, how can I hack my day to move? You know, I'm going to put the washing out. Let's make it into like some movement. I'm going to play with my kids. Okay, let's play a game that involves getting myself to move as well as them to move. And we do like squat challenges, and we we'll play Snap for ages, and we have to all squat and see how long we can squat. And they always beat me because obviously kids are really good and their joints are really healthy. They have great posture and stuff.
Oh, I love that.
But yeah, it's fun. Yeah, just like movement is so important. Maintaining muscle mass as we age is really important for the immune system. I go into depth about all the different kinds of exercise in the book, so kind of take a bit of deep dive.
I'll put the link for the book in the comments if it hasn't been put already.
Thank you.
By Clotilde. So and then, you know, at the moment everyone's moving online, so when we're at home, you know, in the morning at 9 o'clock you can join Joe Wicks, the body coach.
Oh, you've been doing that.
I'm doing it with Isabella. Honestly,
yeah, me too.
I think I've been, I haven't been doing enough squats lately because I can feel it. I can feel
it's it. A workout. It's a workout.
I mean, he's the best. I mean, we would like today, so funny with the Karate Kid movements and stuff. Like he's making it so fun and just gifting us with this time. So, you know, in the morning, that's something you can do. Get up from your desk. We're at home now, you can lunge to the kitchen. You know, you're not in the office environment, so it's okay. You can lunge in your pajamas to the kitchen if that's
the best thing is nobody can see you working out in the living room in your pajamas with your, like, you know, mum bun on.
Yes, exactly. You can do some squats as you're standing at the computer. Like there's so much that you can be doing. So I hope that you can use this time at home to do that as well. We have one question, if I can ask you. Is it impacting the immune system to follow a vegetarian or vegan diet?
I think it's only going to impact the immune system if it's not followed like carefully. I think that, you know, if you're excluding any food groups, whether it's to be vegetarian, to be vegan, or for any other reason, then you have to make sure that you plug any deficiencies that could arise from that. If you don't have any deficiencies, there's no saying per se that your immunity would be affected. But I have to say some people fare better on a vegetarian or vegan diet than others. So it might depend on your own physiology. And obviously protein is really important because it's the building blocks of everything. And the immune system needs protein to do its job. So that can be something that's more tricky to get on a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet, but not necessarily impossible. It just has to be followed carefully. And obviously B12 and omega-3 would be sort of the other two that you should maybe think about.
And iron, I think, as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that, you know, I was vegan for a while. I was vegetarian then vegan, and I was I'm back in my 20s, early 20s. Actually, what led me like down a slippery slope, because I just became like so obsessed with what I was eating. But I was such an unhealthy vegan. Like, oh my God, if I think
Yeah, I
back.
mean, it's easy to do that because there's a lot of
Especially
marketing
in
of
those days.
products.
We're talking 20
Yeah,
years ago now, where like there wasn't,
yeah,
I was in South Africa and there weren't like these, basically I was living on like bread and apples, and like I wasn't getting in beans and pulses. I didn't
yeah,
understand about the protein, but protein is so important for everything. It's also the building blocks to some of our hormones. If we're not having enough protein, then we have quite a few rate limiting steps, and the body has to work that much harder just to be doing its daily functions. So it's really important that if you are following a vegan or vegetarian diet, that there's so many great blogs as well where you can get advice on
yeah.
what to be eating, but maybe go and speak to your doctor, speak to your nutritionist, and just get an idea of, do you have any gaps that you need to be filling?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just checking if, oh, another one, is there evidence on bee products supporting immunity, for example, bee pollen or propolis?
Not anything that's not sort of been funded by the companies that make these products. So I think there's probably some test tube studies where they take out the sort of bioactive ingredient and show that it's doing something, but whether that translates to an effect in a human, because we're a lot more complex than a test tube, I wouldn't say so.
And what about echinacea?
Yeah, echinacea is a funny one. So echinacea is like the plant. It actually has several hundred different potential bioactive compounds inside it. So unless you know what you're buying and how much of that is actually active in the product, and what if the thing that you're buying is the one that's been studied, then it's kind of potluck really what you're getting when you buy a supplement. It has been shown to help some of the immune cells do their job better, and that might be useful when you have the cold and flu season. But in the coronavirus situation, you perhaps don't want the immune system cells to work harder than normal because they might overshoot and cause some damage. So again, this with the current pandemic, I'd just be very cautious of supplements because they might have shown efficacy for certain viral infections like the standard cold and flu that we get in winter, but none of these have been tested for coronavirus. So I think we just need to really be careful.
That's what I was speaking about with my husband today, because we use echinacea that I get from a herbalist, and as soon as like there's an onset of slight sore throat or anything, then we gargle with it and swallow, and it works for us. My husband, well, it works for me. I just make him take it, so I'm hoping it works for him too. But I was saying to him this evening that I have no idea how this will react for coronavirus, like no idea. So
Yeah.
we don't know. We just don't know at the
Yeah,
moment. That's not
exactly.
something that will be on the list with any symptoms that we get, because we don't know, and we don't want to, as you just said there, we don't want to be doing that with the coronavirus, because it's it's uncharted territory that we're in it right now, and
Yeah.
we will know at some point, hopefully,
Yeah.
what we can do. So would you say, like on the propolis and the bee pollen, for example, say, I mean, I know some people use bee pollen a lot in their smoothies and stuff, so carrying on with that, or if you had to, there are a lot of propolis products that you can buy. I know there's quite a few, like in the health stores in Holland and Barrett. If that's something that you take normally, do you think taking it now, if you don't have any symptoms, would be okay, or taking it if you did have symptoms?
I think it's probably not something you should start if you get symptoms. I think if it's part of your normal routine, I mean, it's probably got a variety of different nutrients that are just building towards a healthy diet. I don't think it's going to have a huge, impact, really. I think it's just we have to look at the diet as the product of everything you consume. And I doubt that it would be something that's really moving the needle. But again, it depends on the specific product and the dosing and stuff.
Okay. So I thought we'd be chatting for about half an hour. We've done an hour 15. I'm so grateful for your time. You must be
No
exhausted.
problem.
It's such a busy time for you, I'm sure.
It's been crazy. I feel like
And because of your book and your kids at home.
I've been up since way too early. Yeah,
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for being here with us.
No,
I've
thank
loved
you for
it.
having me.
And how can people find you? How can they get your book?
Probably Instagram. I'm trying my best to keep on top of that. It's everything else at the moment, but that's probably the best place to catch me. It's just my name, so it's Dr._Jenna _Macciochi, which is Macciochi. I am on Twitter, Dr. JMac, but not very often. And then the book on Amazon, just search my name, Immunity, the Science of Staying Well, and
it's amazing. So I have just started reading it now, and it is absolutely incredible. Well done. I've got one more question. Could I please ask you about essential oils? Do you think essential oils can help with immunity? That was another question that we got.
Well, there's some evidence that like certain volatile oils that are produced from trees and plants can have an effect on cortisol and therefore immunity. And there's also been some evidence showing that certain essential oils are antimicrobial. It sort of depends on what context you put it in, because you have to think about everything else that you're doing in your diet and your lifestyle. So they're probably not something that people should play around with unless they do it under a qualified practitioner, I would say.
I agree with essential oils, absolutely.
Yeah, it can be very tricky.
Okay, I'm really going to let you go this time. Thank you so much. And then I'm going to put links to Jenna's Instagram and to her book. And I honestly get the book, read the book. It's just the most amazing time. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge with us this evening.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Great. I'll speak to you soon. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Bye.